Darkly Dreaming Dexter, Chapter 17. I need to go back about 2-3 sentences because this chapter begins mid-sentence from the previous. In that tremendous flash of freedom, on my way to do the thing for the first time, sanctioned by the almighty Harry, I receded, faded back into the scenery of my own dark self, while the other me crouched and growled. I would do it at last, do what I had been created to do, and I did. Chapter 17. And I had. So long ago, yet the memory still pulsed in me. Of course, I still had that first dry drop of blood on its slide. It was my first, and I could call up that memory any time by taking out my little slide and looking at it. I did, every so often. It had been very special. It had been a very special day for Dexter. Last nurse had been first playmate, and she had opened up so many wonderful doors for me. I had learned so much, found out about so many new things. But why was I remembering last nurse now? Why did this whole series of events seem to be whipping back to me through time? I could not afford a fond remembrance of my first pair of long pants. I needed to explode in action, make my large decisions, and begin important deeds. Instead of strolling sappily down memory lane, wallowing in sweet memories of my first blood slide, which, now that I thought of it, I had not collected from Jaworski. It was the kind of tiny, absurd, unimportant detail that turned strong men of action into fidgeting, whimpering neurotics. I needed that slide. Jaworski's death was useless without it. The whole idiotic episode was now worse than stupid and impulsive foolishness. It was incomplete. I had no slide. I shook my head, trying to spastically to rattle two gray cells from the same synapse. I half wanted to take my boat out for an early morning spin. Perhaps the salt air would clear the stupidity from my skull. Or I could head south to Turkey Point and hope that the radiation might mutate me back into some rational creature. But instead, I made coffee. No slide, indeed. It cheapened the whole experience. Without the slide, I might as well have stayed home, or almost at any rate. There had been other rewards. I smiled fondly, recalling the mix of moonlight and muffled screams. Oh, what a madcap little monster I had been. An episode unlike any of my others. It was good to break out of the dull routine from time to time, and there was Rita, of course, but I had no idea what to think about that, so I didn't. Instead, I thought of the cool breeze flowing across the squirming little man who, instead, I thought of the cool breeze flowing across the squirming little man who had liked to hurt children. It had almost been a happy time, but of course, in 10 years the memory would fade, and without the slide I could not bring it back. I needed my souvenir. Well, we would see. While the coffee brewed, I checked for the newspaper, more out of hope than expectation. It was rare for the paper to arrive before 6:30, and on Sundays it often came after 8. It was another clear example of the disintegration of society that had so worried Harry. Really, now, if you can't get my newspaper on time, how can you expect me to refrain from killing people? No paper, no matter. Press coverage of my adventures had never been terribly interesting to me. and Harry warned me about the idiocracy of keeping any kind of scrapbook. He didn't need to. I rarely glanced at the reviews of my performances. This time was a little different, of course, since I had been so impetuous and was mildly worried that I had not covered my tracks properly. I was just a bit curious to see what might be said about my accidental party. So I sat with my coffee for about 45 minutes until I heard the paper thump against the door. I brought it in and flipped it open. Whatever else can one say about journalists? And there is a very great deal, almost an encyclopedia. They are very rarely troubled by memory. The same paper that had so recently trumped Cop's Coral Killer now screamed Iceman's story melts. It was a long and lovely piece, very dramatically written, detailing the discovery of a badly abused body at a construction site off Old Color Road. A Miami Metro Police spokesperson, meaning Detective LaGuardia, I was sure, said that it was too much, too soon, to say anything without certainty, but this was probably a copycat killing. The paper had drawn its own conclusion, another thing they are seldom shy about, and was now wondering aloud if the distinguished gentleman in captivity, Mr. Darrell Earl McHale, was actually in fact the killer, or was the killer still at large, as evidenced by his last outrage upon public morality? Because the paper carefully pointed out, how could we believe that two such killers could possibly be on the loose at the same time? It was very neatly reasoned, and it occurred to me that if they had spent as much energy and mental power trying to solve the murders, the whole thing would be over by now. But it was all very interesting reading, of course, and it certainly made me speculate. Good heavens. Was it really possible that this mad animal was still running loose? Was anyone safe? The telephone rang. I glanced at my wall clock. It was 6:45. It could only be Deborah. I'm reading it now, I said into the phone. You said bigger, Deborah told me. Splashier. And this isn't? I asked in great innocence. It's not even a hooker, she said. Some part-time janitor from Ponce Junior High, chopped up at a construction site on Old Color. What the hell, Dexter? You did know I'm not perfect, didn't you, Deborah? It doesn't even fit the pattern. Where's the cold you said there would be? What happened to the small space? It's Miami, Deb. People will steal anything. It's not even a copycat, she said. It isn't even anything like the others. Even LaGuardia got that right. She's already so on print. Damn it all, Dexter. My butt is way out in the wind here, and this is just some random slasher or a drug thing. It hardly seems fair to blame me for all of that. God damn it, Dex, she said, and hung up. The early morning TV shows spent a full 90 seconds on the shocking discovery of the shattered body. Channel 7 had the best adjectives, but nobody knew any more than the paper. They radiated outrage and a grim sense of disaster that even carried over into the weather forecast, but I'm sure a larger part of that was caused by the lack of pictures. Another beautiful day. A Miami day. Mutilated corpses with a chance of afternoon showers. I got dressed and went to work. I admit I had a minor ulterior motive in heading for the office so early, and I beefed it up by stopping for pastries. I bought 2 crullers, an apple fritter, and a cinnamon roll, the size of my spare tire. I ate the fritter and 1 cruller as I cheerfully threaded through the lethal traffic. I don't know how I get away with eating so many donuts. I don't gain any weight or get pimples, and although that may seem fair, I can't find it in my heart to complain. I came out reasonably well in the genetic crapshoot. High metabolism, good size, and strength, all of which helped me in my hobby. And I have been told that I am not awful to look at, which I believe is meant to be a compliment. I also didn't need a great deal of sleep, which was nice in the morning. I had hoped to arrive early to beat Vince Masuka to work, and it seemed that I had. His office was dark when I got there, clutching my white paper bag for camouflage. But my visit had nothing whatever to do with donuts. I scanned his work area quickly, looking for telltale evidence boxes labeled Jaworski and yesterday's date. I found it quickly. Out a few tissue samples, there might be enough. I pulled on a pair of latex gloves, and in a moment I had the samples to my clean glass slide. I do realize how stupid it was to take yet another risk, but I had to have my slide. I just tucked it away in a Ziploc bag when I heard him come in behind me. I quickly put things back in place and whirled to my face to the door as Vince came through and saw me. "My God," I said, "you move so silently." "So you have had ninja training?" "I have had 2 older brothers," Vince said. "It's the same thing." I held up the white paper bag and bowed. "Master, I bring you a gift." He looked at the bag curiously. "May Buddha bless you, grasshopper." "What is it?" I tossed him the bag. It hit him in the chest and slid to the floor. "So much for ninja training," I said. "My finely tuned body needs coffee to function," Vince told me, bending to retrieve the bag. "What's in here?" "That hurt." He reached into the bag, frowning. "It better not be the body parts." He pulled out a huge cinnamon roll and eyed it. "Ay, caramba. My village will not starve this year. We are very grateful, grasshopper." He bowed, holding up the pastry. "A debt repaid is a blessing on us all, my child." "In that case," I said, "do you have the case file on the one they found last night, of old color?" Vince took a big bite of the cinnamon roll. His lips gleamed with frosting as he slowly chewed. He said, and swallowed. "Are we feeling left out?" "If it means Deborah, yes, we are," I said. I told her I'd take a look at the file for her. "Wolf," he said, mouth full of pastry, Murph Plutty, but is mine, nine. "Forgive me, master," I said. "Your language is strange to me." He chewed and swallowed. I said, "At least there's plenty of blood this time, but you're still a wallflower. Bradley got the call for this one." "Can I see the file?" He took another bite. "Yeah, woof, a wife." "Very true, I'm sure. And in English?" Vince swallowed again. I said, "I was even alive when his leg came off." Human beings are so resilient, aren't they? Vince stuck the whole pastry in his mouth and picked up the file, holding it out to me, and taking a large bite of the roll at the same time. I grabbed the folder. "I've got to go," I said. Before he tried to talk again, he pulled the roll out of his mouth. "Too late," he said. I walked slowly back to my little cubbyhole, glancing at the contents of the folder. Gervasio Cesar Martez had discovered the body. His statement was, or top of the folder. He was a security guard employed by Sago Security Systems. He worked for them for 14 months and had no criminal record. Martez had found the body at approximately 10:17 p.m. and immediately made a quick search of the area before calling the police. He wanted to catch the pendejo who was doing this thing because no one should do such things. And they had done it when Gervasio, was on the job. That was like they had done it to him, you know? So he would catch the monster himself, but this had not been possible. There was no sign of the perpetrator, not anywhere, and so he had to call the police. The poor man had taken it personally. I shared this outrage. Such brutalities should not be allowed, of course. I was also very grateful that his scene of honor had given us time to get away. And here I was always thinking of morality as useless. I turned the corner into my dark little room and walked right into Detective LaGuardia. Ha! She said. You don't seem too good. But she didn't move. I'm not a morning person, I told her. My biorhythms are all out of it until noon. She looked up at me from an inch away. They look okay to me, she said. I slid around her to my desk. Can I make some small contribution to the full majesty of the law this morning? I asked her. She stared at me. You have a message, she said, on your machine. I looked over at my answering machine. Sure enough, the light was blinking. The woman really was a detective. It's some girl, LaGuardia said. She seems kind of sleepy and happy. You got a girlfriend, Dexter? This was a strange hint of challenge in her voice. You know how it is, I said. Women today are so forward, and when you're as handsome and as I am, they absolutely fling themselves at your head. Perhaps an unfortunate choice of words, as I couldn't help but thinking of the woman's head flung at me not so long ago. Watch out, LaGuardia said. Sooner or later, one of them will stick. I had no idea what she thought she meant, but it was a very unsettling image. I'm sure you're right. Until then, carpe diem. What? It's Latin, I said. It means complain in daylight. What have you got about this thing last night? She said suddenly. I held up the case file. I wasn't just looking at it, I said. It's not the same, she said, frowning. No matter how those asshole reporters say, Mikhail is guilty. He confessed. This is not the same. I guess it seems like too much of a coincidence, I said. Two brutal killers at the same time. LaGuardia shrugged. It's Miami. What do they think? Here is where these guys come on vacation. There's lots of bad guys out here. I can't catch them all. To be truthful, she couldn't catch any of them, unless they hurled themselves off a building and into the front seat of her car. But this didn't seem like a good time to bring that up. LaGuardia stepped closer to me and flicked the folder with a dark red fingernail. I need to find something here, Dexter, to show it's not the same. A light dawned. She was getting unpleasant pressure, probably from Captain Matthews, a man who believed what he read in the papers as long as they spelled out his name right. And she needed some ammunition to fight back. Of course, it's not the same, I said, but why come to me? She stared at me, but for a moment, through half-closed eyes, a curious effect. I think I had seen the same stare in some of the movies Rita had dragged me to see, but why on earth would Detective LaGuardia had turned the look on me? I couldn't say. I let you in the 72-hour briefing, she said. Even though Dokes wants you dead, I let you stay. Thank you very much. Because you have a feeling for these things sometimes. the serial ones. And that's what they all say. Dexter has a feeling sometimes. Oh, really? I said. Just a lucky guess once or twice, and I need somebody in the lab who can find something. Then why not ask Vince? He's not so cute, she said. You find something. She was still uncomfortably close, so I could smell her shampoo. I'll find something, I said. She nodded at the answering machine. You gonna call her back? You don't have time for chasing pussy. She still hadn't backed up, and it took me a moment to realize she was talking about the message on my machine. I gave her the very, very best political smile. I think it's chasing me, detective. Ha, you got that right. She gave me a long hook, then turned on the walk away. I don't know why, but I watched her go. I really couldn't think of anything else to do. Just before she passed out of sight around the corner, she smoothed her skirt across her hips and turned to look at me. Then she was gone off into the vague mysteries of homicidal politics. And me? Poor dear dazed Dexter, what else could I do? I sank into my office chair and pushed the play button on my answering machine. Hi, Dexter, it's me, of course. It was. And as odd as it was, the slow, slightly raspy voice sounded like me, was Rita. I was thinking about last night. Call me, mister. As LaGuardia had observed, she sounded kind of tired and happy. Apparently, a real girlfriend now. Where would the madness end? First time I'm reading this. Thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it. There are moments where I definitely lose a line and forget who's talking. But you guys like this and you want me to post it, so I'm gonna keep doing it. And look forward to chapter 18 coming up soon. I'm going to be doing at least 1, 2, maybe 3 of these readings per week. And somebody commented, yes, I will be doing all 8 novels so long as you guys keep enjoying this. That's really honestly the main point. As long as I have fun and you guys enjoy it, then the world is titties, baby.